The U.S. military has not beaten another top player since the 1940s, but they play Melee on the West Coast, so everyone overvalues them.
Right.
That's the way it is.
That is no culture, it's my brag. Your taste for bullshit reveals a lust for a form of office.
What's up, gamers?
Hello.
Hi. This is Gamers Rise Up. Usually, this podcast is about things in esports being dumb and a huge waste of money.
I think it's buzzier to call it a leftist critique of esports as a podcast. It also makes it sound like we did homework.
I did homework. I did the reading.
Yeah, I read like two things.
They were all the same thing.
I made a tweet. It's good.
Yeah, that's why you're here.
Yeah, so we're here with a guest. Which,
Do you want to introduce
Whoa.
yourself?
yeah.
I am the guest. I'm Victoria Rose, and I am mostly known as an esports writer, freelancer, by the way. And yeah, that's generally it.
Yeah. And today we're here to talk about something that might actually matter for once. And that is the military's involvement in esports and recruiting in esports particularly. Victoria, we invited because we saw that she did good tweets about it and wanted to have her on.
And by the way, it doesn't sound far off from, hey, esports is wasting money on things again.
True. Well, I don't know, because I actually think that, like, this isn't the worst idea the Army's ever had in terms of recruitment.
Yeah.
Oh, for their goals, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like there was an article like, will this work or is it a cynical ploy? And it's like, it's a cynical ploy that might work. Like, this is probably better. Apparently the Army's actually been like really, really missing their recruitment goals recently, which is like interesting when you consider like how downwardly mobile everyone is.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But also less interesting when you consider the fact that war is evolving finally. You know, Halo combat has finally evolved, and combat is no longer people driven. So we don't need a big army. We don't need these
So are you
things
saying
anymore.
that venture capital is getting spent there also very poorly on overhiring and
Oh, yes.
things we don't really need? Guys, I think the military budget might be too big. Yeah,
Have
so
we considered that maybe spending money on war is good, actually?
oh well, I mean, so many people would lose their jobs at the death factory, you know. But yeah, I feel like a lot of discussion has been going on this on Twitter, and there's some people I wanted to particularly shout out. One being Sapphics Caliber. Yeah, Mona's great. Nicety? Hold on, They got banned on Twitter, and we actually lost the thread for something else, but also like leftist stuff. They were calling people TERFs, which is, you know, good stuff. And
Fighting the good fight.
salute to our real troops.
Fellow
in-
suspended person on Twitter for calling
Yeah.
people TERFs. I said that TERFs, a few nights before New Year's, I said TERFs should get, what you call it, should step on a nail and get tinnitus. And I got banned for that.
Yeah, I've never been banned
Wait, you
for
said
anything I've said on.
tinnitus?
Tinnitus, yeah.
They should get tetanus and
that's the thing
tinnitus.
with you.
Oh, wait, that's actually really funny. That went totally over my head.
You just get an inexplicable ringing in your ear after stepping on a nail.
It's like,
I'm not
hearing
tinnitus.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing we should preface this with, which is like, everyone here thinks the U.S. military is bad. And in order to get into this discussion, you can't just like have an argument about whether or not global imperialism is good. You have to like, look, we're all going to agree here that it isn't good and talk about how it is going to interact with this thing that we actually like for the most part. Knowing that it's something that we should actively resist, even if it is like, yeah, it's not just a waste of money. It's actually like a very effective thing, and they have a very good budget. And I think right now, from what I can tell, especially with like the fighting game stuff, it's actually quite organic from within the military. It's basically a bunch of military dudes who like games because that's everyone now.
Let's
Yes,
let's back it up chronologically, because I think the genesis of military involvement in gaming is a lot more developed and still currently more sinister. And I'm talking about, you mentioned Raytheon as an example of a company who does put money into and get money out of games like Rainbow Six, whatever the fuck, Call of Duty, all these like military adjacent IPs in gaming that are, for lack of a better term, just more or less straight up propaganda. And I think that's been their most effective tool. And what we're talking about today is a little more specific, like their direct physical presence at fighting game tournaments. But I think we need to talk first about this little model. Yeah, that like this isn't new, it's just getting worse.
Yeah, and it's intruding, like, I don't have a lot of control over Activision and what Activision does. And, you do see all that stuff about, like, there used to be all those little, and I'm not going to say that, like, Call of Duty, like, the World War II one was, like, incredibly, like, good politically. Like, look, I guess we were killing the right people in it, but, like, there were all these little anti-war messages that would come up when you died and stuff. And it's like, that's increasingly left. And now we have, like, you are killing brown people with increasingly advanced weapons, and all of those quotes are gone, and you have like flashy sponsorships by the military itself. And also, but again, like nobody here has actually any ability to influence that really, except to like tell people that it's bad. But in fighting games, it's a grassroots thing, and your voice does kind of matter.
Yeah, it just hits this really interesting intersection of like, when you look at the FGC, it's like you can't talk about the FGC without pointing out it's the most diverse, basically esports base. But also like that kind of comes, I guess, at a heads with the like trappings of why people go into the military to begin with. Which is that a lot of them, can't afford that much. Like they go to their weeklies. They have the things they need. And like if you can't even reach that level, then you have to join the military to get your education, to get your health care. And it's kind of interesting that people are cognizant of that. And yet they're kind of existing alongside this recruitment effort, just because a lot of us are broke in esports. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, that makes it like the perfect place. Like that, the thing about all this stuff and all of the military and esports, because there's two things, which is the military's esports teams, which are like soldiers who are like, we're going to be an esports team and we're going to find the best like gamers in the military and make an esports team out of them. And then there's also the sponsorships of like Cloud9 by like the Air Force.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, which is super wild. And like what you're talking about brings up a really good point, which is a lot of the time, and especially in Melee, we struggle with like, okay, we need sponsors for these events. What do we sell to Melee players that they will actually like buy? And a lot of the time it's like, well, not only do Melee players not really need like PC gaming stuff, but also Melee players are broke as hell. And so it's like, wait a minute, these people are broke as hell, so we can sell them joining the military.
We thought making a deal with Nintendo was making a deal with the devil, but here we go.
The grand scheme.
Yeah. But I mean, that makes a lot of sense that like, I don't know, like you were saying, that it's something that we should be aware of in an ideal world, but also like thinking from the perspective of like a recruiter, it's a very easy sell, both in terms of like the military trying to do recruiting on that platform and also to people who are like running events. It's like, oh yeah, of course we can get all of these military folks behind it because we ran out of ideas. The viewers of Melee aren't buying anything.
You'll have someone who's like big, but like big in the context of Smash, and like as soon as they'll want to involve themselves in Smash, and like this can range from like someone who like has done stupid stuff in the past but like doesn't seem like an overall like horrible person like Ninja, to also like Keemstar, who is just like a black hole of influencer culture and like
what if he partners with the military?
Well, that's what I'm saying is like Smashers will to Keemstar what something with like actual money and influence that like doesn't need to look for people like Keemstar because it's already at least supposedly outgrown them, will to the American military, which is like the greatest, the most powerful and most well-funded force on Earth, public or private, probably.
Yeah.
So I guess a question worth asking is, what do they want to do with these teens? What does we know they want to recruit them, but what do we want to recruit them for? Are these Like, there's the easy brain connection to look at games and say, like, oh, we want kids to be drone pilots. Because, like, if you've seen a drone control surface,
An Xbox
there's a
360
pretty
controller.
significant parallel between.
No, I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally submarines are piloted by 360
Yeah.
controllers.
Yeah, they're like unbranded 360 controllers.
But is that cheap?
There's a lot of like weird stuff that the military does, and a lot of it is like just engineering projects or like just doing stuff in America. But then like you get things like Japan, where they just send out random Marines to hang out and commit crimes and all the bad things. And there's memes about it because it's that bad. Yeah, apparently, and cause car crashes, which never happens in Japan, by the way. But yeah, I mean, people drive, but like, there's no demographic in Japan like the military that absolutely messes up. So you could sell that to the kids, or you can sell like, hey, you're going to this random colony we have in middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the thing that, because in looking into this, I think what a lot of the statements from the military folks that have been about this, about like the military esports team and all that, is we want to show people that there's all kinds of different jobs that you can have in the military. And like a lot of the time when it comes to recruitment, these days especially, when pretty much every war for the most part people know is like complete bullshit and like terrible,
Really?
people don't feel like I'm going and fighting Nazis, so I'm okay to die because whatever. That doesn't work anymore with military recruitment. And so the angle that recruiting seems to have been doing for the past pretty long time is, well, when you sign up for the military, you're not necessarily signing up to die. You could be an engineer, or you could be a mathematician, or you could be an esports player. And I think that that's the angle that this is showing, is like kids who play Call of Duty can be like, wow, I can join the military and be just like these guys, and I could even like play Call of Duty still in the military and not die.
If they pass basic.
Exactly, if they pass basic. But that's like,
Half of them can't.
I don't know. I think that
basic
they're trying
but for
to.
gamers, and it's just like the CS:GO trials over and over again. until you get it
The
slowed
mud that you're crawling through is just steeped in Mountain Dew. It's like, why is it so sticky?
Yeah, well, that's it develops core strength. They want kids to think that you can join the military and like not give up your like gamer lifestyle. Like they want to get into this new demographic of people who, like, because nobody wants to just like sign up and then instantly burst into flame and die like the second you sign on the dotted line or whatever. And so I think that all of these things of like the diversification of all that, and like specifically in esports, is to make people feel more at ease with the idea of signing up for the military, because they feel like, well, if someone's gonna be on the front lines at some point, but it might not be me. Like, I think that's what the military is pushing.
It's selling being in the military as something more than just being on the front lines, and something you can kind of just do until you get out and get your college degree, which, I mean, to be fair, is for the most part true. Like, most people don't actually face active combat.
Yeah.
And I think that also ties into like a larger thing with I think in context of the conversation we were having earlier, like the military doesn't really need an active conflict to be gearing up for. They just kind of, I think for almost all intents and purposes, the military basically acts like a private company. And I think this is like every other esports thing, basically a branding exercise. It's like to raise awareness, but it's also just like it makes the military seem cool and down to earth, and it wants to do all the same games that you do.
Now, something I want to ask the whole table, I don't want to sound like I'm playing devil's advocate here, but like genuinely, per what you were talking about, how most U.S. Army recruits these days will never be in any meaningful mortal danger, but still be loosely part of a machine that is imperialistic and bloodthirsty. Why is it still sinister on an individual level for them to be here, besides the fact that it's children they're frequently recruiting, which is inherently, again, as most of the article stated, we're the only country in the first world who still lets their military go anywhere near children at any point.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, like
that's not cool.
Like there was one of the articles cited backlash in the UK over like them recruiting 16-year-olds, because apparently nobody else does that. And I was like, really? That's surprising, because like, I mean, here, like they start when they're 18. Like you get to the kids while they're in high school. Like that's what we do. But like, why is that sinister to do at a fighting game tournament?
The one thing I will say before I
specifically?
address that,
Yeah.
is that one thing that surprised me in a very positive way was I was looking up all the reaction to Cloud9 announcing its Air Force sponsorship, and you got a lot of like, not necessarily even leftist, but just like very unideologically grounded pushback. And it was pretty funny for me because I'm used to hearing get politics out of my games in a very negative light. But like this time it was actually like, no, that's fair. Actually, this political like engine shouldn't be in our games.
The Air Force is a particularly loony wing of the military at this point also, because their primary meme for us spectating them is the F-35 project, which has been an historically insanely expensive, spectacular failure. That like
Overwatch
you
League
can
of
gesture
military.
to anytime oh my god you can anytime like a boomer is like, how are you going to pay for it, when you're talking about healthcare or student debt, you just gesture wildly to a picture of an F-35 and be like, I hate to do whataboutism, but come on. And also space. The Air Force is thinking about space.
Yeah, and
because
like,
they think it's 2235 and we're the UNSC.
Well,
And we gotta stop the Covenant.
but yeah, it feels sinister because like the political like ideology, like the military does just have its own political ideology to begin with by existing, which is like, you know, this degree of racism and this degree of toxic masculinity and what it means to be powerful, what it means to be successful. And when you come into a fighting game tournament that's already like a fighting game, it's two people beating each other up, but it's like consensual in that matter. And it starts to topple that line of, well, what does it mean to be violent, and is violence good actually? And or even if it's not like physical violence, is like political violence, and it starts blurring those lines. It's a lot of fun.
I see what you're saying. So it's like when we play fighting games, it's like kind of a consensual, passionate competition, specifically of sport, and you're kind of harnessing that energy and saying like, what if you really cared about your quote unquote freedom country, power, liberty, and you channeled that.
Yeah, into like,
Yeah.
what if killing good, like you come out of it alive when you do an FGC
Yeah.
tournament and you shake hands at the end of it, and
Yeah,
this is
I
like
mean-
you're hacking some unknown spies stuff now. Is that okay?
One of the most infuriating things I've ever come across was like this this post by this guy who is like, actually the FGC is the most toxic masculinity thing ever, but not because of like the way the FGC is,
Name
which is
names,
like a
bitch.
fair criticism, but like I don't think that people punching each other is good. Which is just like, I don't know, like I understand where it's coming from, and I also think it's a completely useless analysis. And it's like, there's like, why even focus on like something as small and niche as the fighting game
If
community?
you're
at
gonna
that
be
point?
stupid, at least be entertaining. Like,
Yeah, like
don't be
that's just
fucking inane.
so twee and horrible. And like, I actually do think there's a lot of value in like a controlled catharsis that all of us get from fighting games.
It's like the main counter or the main argument for games like GTA is people are like, it's making people murderous. I'm like, no, it's definitely getting it out of their system.
I actually think it might also be making. I'm
Yeah,
of two minds. When it
That's
comes
a
to
whole
GTA.
nother episode.
I think it's true
Yeah.
of every esport but mine. Yeah, I mean, so for me, it's like there is partially that in that it's like I agree with you that there is like the transformation of something that I think is like fundamentally very pure. And that isn't to say the execution is always good. Obviously, the FGC and gaming in a wider context, like.
but the spirit, the
has
moment
its
where you're in
problems.
the damn game and
Yeah.
all the other bullshit doesn't matter.
The moment where like
Yeah.
Street Fighter 2 Ryu is you, and that's you know, like that shit is cool as hell. But then also that, like, honestly, even if that wasn't true, fighting games are something I like, and esports widely are more or less something I like, and the military is something that terrifies me. And I don't really need an ideological position that says there is a reason I need this out of this thing particularly, except that each and every one of us should fight individually in all of the communities we exist in to keep this shit out of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's really my take. It's like, yes, I'm doing it in esports because that is where I reside. And if you are in lumberjack sports, that is where you should fight.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, I think all military recruitment is sinister, and it's not, like the military as a thing, like people sign up for it because like they can't go to college otherwise, and they can't they're they don't have access to healthcare, like they want to leave their shitty like communities, like I don't know, like queer people join the military because they live in like homophobic towns and they want to like get money and get out of there, or just leave their situations. Like the military and military recruiting fundamentally preys on like desperate people and like people who are like in need, and says, take this gamble and do this bad thing,
and do that to the other people.
And do it to other people too, and maybe you can have freedom afterwards if you make it. And I think that that's always evil.
Heads up, gamers, the Veteran Affairs Association is completely corrupt, and veteran healthcare is actually terrible. So the free healthcare that they're baiting you in with is a fucking nightmare.
It's bad.
Yeah,
like
it's very bad.
We wish like we could at least say like, oh yeah, you do get healthcare out of it. We understand. No, it's
you get to
genuinely
go to the emergency room when you get the common cold.
That wilds me out because like,
congrats,
look,
have fun, don't get staph.
There is like a real thing where a big part of the push not to make college more affordable in the U.S. is literally just because of how hard it would hurt military recruitment, but also like how many vets, like how actually expensive would it be to pay for vets' healthcare? I guess it would be more expensive than it would be usually because, it's more expensive to pay for the healthcare of people who are more likely to have like medical conditions from the thing they were doing, but also like the amount of bad PR and like political capital they lose on just like what amounts to a very actually pretty small part of the population. Like you'd think they would just, throw them a blank check and like get it over with.
Well, that's the thing is
they can't even do that. That's
from a
like,
healthcare standpoint, they're also beholden to the completely arcane and predatory system that the rest of us are. Like just because the VA pays for it doesn't make the things they're buying or selling any less expensive, outmoded, and like not good. So even if they did give the VA a blank check, they would still be living in the same hell as we do.
Yeah. Plus, I think they just consider veterans to be like discarded people. Yeah. I don't think they consider them to be real people.
Which is one of the more sinister parts of this whole thing. Something more catty that I want to point out about the military's esports offensive is that if college sports were any indication, the Army and Navy teams rarely generate the caliber of professional athlete that the rest of the college system does. So if you're going to join the Army's esports team, you probably aren't going to make as much money as Booga. Just going to put that out there.
Joining the Army's esports
don't join the Army because it's just not. It's going to be like a third tier esports team.
But that's a misrepresentation of what's happening because there's no one joining the Army's esports team. You have people who are already in the Army saying, "Please, Dad, can I have some money for ice cream?" Goes and buys esports team instead, and then you have the Army funding independent private. Like sponsoring independent private CSGO teams.
Yeah, and it keeps their people happy for like 20, because otherwise they're going to sit around and watch hentai. Like, I wish I were joking, but no.
Oh man, I want to see those fucking Google searches.
In the military. Yeah.
Somebody has them.
I don't know. But so okay, I kind of want to flip it a little bit because we've been talking about the perspective of like, okay, the military, why are they getting into esports? Like, what is the side for them? I think the other thing is like, why is Cloud9 allowing itself to be sponsored by the Air Force? Like, I haven't seen any, like, because you know what I mean. Like, we're
Cloud9.
Here's the thing that chaps my ass about this whole thing, with respect to like all these teams and taking on the military as a sponsor, is like I haven't seen any indication that Cloud9 or anyone else who's being sponsored by the military has even thought about any of the implications of it.
Oh yeah,
like
on any level besides like political.
Yeah, well, they're just like, well,
Cha-ching,
oh great,
baby.
we got another sponsor. They're gonna, we'll be able to run this.
It's that much money. I literally think it's straight up like, even if it's without, it's dead ass like for exposure.
And,
This isn't to
and
say
a quick
they-
buck and a quick buck,
Which isn't
Absolutely
to say
a quick
they
buck.
aren't getting paid, but like these people are so inherently unideological in their approach to anything. Like the people who run esports are not people who are like, I'm willing to sell my soul to the devil. They have no concept that a devil exists. They don't believe there are forces for evil in the world.
I just think they wanted the money. I really do think
that's
it's that
what I
easy.
think, too.
There's no
And-
incentive not
and
to
I don't
take it.
think I don't even like. It just seems like they didn't even think about it.
And,
Of course not.
And no, they didn't, because like esports is and like this is getting into a larger discussion of like, you know, what is esports on an international scale, but like Cloud9 is sort of like as American as they are also an international team. And I think it's very American minded to just straight up be like, hey, we're a military
that
team now.
CS:GO has more than one American team on.
Now there are plenty of CS:GO teams that are American, but and I actually went to the E-League thing in Boston when they had that, and I don't know if it was just a stadium because it was it was Boston University Stadium, but they had a whole ass Air Force military something room. I don't mean like one booth. I mean like they had like a room with like games and all this stuff, and that was before the Cloud9 thing, like right before that. And they had like it was with E-League, that's what it was,
Right.
and they had like an Air Force MVP award and
Like
stuff
for the
For-
Air Force or for the
by
esports
the Air Force
people?
for the esports people.
Who won?
Wow.
I don't remember. It was
That's
definitely
fine.
an American though, because they won that event.
Mega.
It was like, oh, it's the biggest esports whatever to ever blah blah blah, and of course it was an American team that did it, so they gave the MVP to
Right.
American. But I don't think that these orgs think about it much beyond like, you know, giving money.
Yeah, but I also
Yeah.
think, well, I think you're right that it is money, but I also think that it is notable just how little moral calculus ever goes on. And there is this assumption that I think kind of a lot of people who've never really thought about anything have, that anything sufficiently big is good. And that's true of influencers, and that's true of horrible death machines that have been destroying the world for upwards of
I
hundreds
think
of
it all happens on the same level of greed. So, like, for another sports parallel, the salute to service, which is the military's involvement in the NFL, the military pays the NFL to do the anthem, to ham up the anthem drama. Like,
Wait,
they
the
didn't always.
NFL?
Like,
Yeah.
the NFL does, like, a Veterans Month.
Wait,
and
the
all these
military
things.
pays
The military
the
pays the NFL.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
The military
Okay.
pays, they catapult money at things like the NFL to keep their name in people's mouths in these situations.
Yeah.
And when Cloud9 sees the Air Force making pitch decks, whatever, they see that same opportunity for esports. And so it's apparent to all of us that there's not any moral calculus going on here. These people are just pursuing the money that's available to them, regardless of how bloody it is. So it falls upon us, the players, the organizers, the journalists, what have you, to kind of quote unquote resist in our own special ways. So what do the average gamer do besides walk by their table at Defend the North and go, which is what I did.
I totally missed that.
Well, definitely get loud. Like, I mean, a lot of people do complain whenever this happens. I mean, only exception I could think of is when StarCraft or the Korean military had a StarCraft team like 10 years ago. But also, you're pretty much
Hold, please.
Yeah, we got sirens
Go
hanging.
away. You're pretty much required to go into the military in Korea.
Yeah.
So it's not like America where it's like they have to make the effort. It's like,
Right.
oh, we have.
You're going to end up with
players.
some good players by sheer statistical.
Yeah, by like you pretty much only faker God can get out of the military, but for the rest of us who can avoid it, like definitely get loud with the teams. They do notice that. Don't avoid buying their merchandise. You're probably going to bandwagon to another team halfway through that tournament you're watching. Might as well just hop the bandwagon in advance. Meme about it. Memes,
Yeah,
memes
it
work.
helps.
Memes are the primary forefront of like political ideology spreading at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
because
that's-
they're engaging and they're funny
Yeah.
and everybody can
And
get a little
literally
Like,
bit.
definitionally
memes-
viral.
Yeah.
Memes
People
are
literally
community.
copy.
Yeah, memes are community.
Um,
Shout outs to Gretchen McCulloch, the internet linguist, whose book everyone should read. And
I just saw that.
talks about
saw
that, and it's in
Is
my
that out
backpack.
yet?
It came out last week. It's in my backpack.
I
if you
need to
wanna-
read it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they have it. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, memes are community, and
Yeah.
that's how ideas spread. So
I think basically like the solution as far as we have one is to make it as toxic as possible, and that's both towards the teams
Smash
who are
Ultimate is doing
entertaining
everything
this.
it can to make it toxic as possible.
Oh yeah,
so
I don't
the
mean
army
okay.
won't go near it.
Context, don't be just shitters so that army don't just have such terrible PR that even the army doesn't want us.
Or just have too many
they're
trans
just gonna
girls
show up more,
to the
yeah.
point where they don't want to.
Well, they're like, well, if the community
Oh,
is
this
all
is too
trans women, how are we
expensive.
going to recruit anyone? Because
Oh,
I don't know.
that won't stop
Actually,
them.
can you be? I don't know what the. I don't even. I'm so out of the loop. Can you even be trans in the military now? Like, you can't, right?
Trump did that thing, right?
Oh yeah, he did that
He
thing.
like
So no.
put the
I
band
think
back in
he did a
place.
thing, and then the army generals were like, "We're not going to do that,"
But
and
I
then
think they
everyone was
went
like,
back.
"Oh, army generals, you're so woke," and it was like,
Right.
"Fucking kill me."
Yeah. Well,
No,
all
but I
right.
think
So
they
a body's a
would-
body.
They actually,
Yeah.
I think they tried to reinstate it like a few weeks or a few months ago or something. So I think it's in effect again.
gotcha. So ladies, do us all a favor. Get out there and be the face of the community so the military thinks that everyone in the FGC is trans and leaves us alone.
Hello,
It's not
Smash
gonna-
Ultimate.
They like trans people because
Oh,
you guys
they
are
do.
impoverished.
Oh,
Generally.
shit.
Yeah, it's true.
Actually, yeah, and
That's
also
why
a lot
a
of
lot of them-
a lot of trans women join the military,
Yeah.
and like trans people in general
lot
join
of
the
people
military
join the
before they
military and
transition, and then they.
Shout out to
Free-
Chelsea
free
Manning.
Chelsea.
Yeah, shout outs to Chelsea Manning.
Free Chelsea.
Free Chelsea, she streamed Apex Legends
Free that gamer.
literally the day before she went back into jail.
She's
Free
a
that
gamer.
gamer.
Only
Yep.
time I've ever watched a battle royale on Twitch.
And
Shout
she
out to
played the
Chelsea
best
Manning,
one.
the game.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the one hand, that's if a team is trying to do shit like this, or an event is trying to do shit like this, push back as hard as possible. Push back on social media. Push back on person. Say you won't go. Don't go if you say you won't go and they still do it. But also towards the military when they start posting this shit on Twitter, get that ratio up.
Yeah, it starts
yeah.
to work on certain people. You
Look,
know?
the PR only works if it looks good when they're doing it. If every time they post, everyone get blown up, and that's what the reports about it have to be, it's a bad look, and they won't want to do it as hard.
But then inevitably Ian Miles Cheong or someone like him will show up and be like, "Oh, typical gamers or leftists or something." Like
I thought they liked gamers.
They do, but they hate anti-military
Of course.
lefty nonsense.
The
So all
typical
those people
gamers-
pile on. But everybody knows how to deal with them. You just put pictures of clown shoes in their replies, and it fucking works. It's fine.
I thought even
love
the
the
right wing,
clutches.
though, like even
Yeah,
right wing,
the
like
clown
kids
is-
don't like the military. That was my impression.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the thing. It's
make it
like,
all go away.
Get politics out of my video games, but like,
but, like,
okay,
for
fair, you
real.
have a point this time. Like,
Yeah.
this
Whole thing, like, it's so vital to just like push back against this, because the thing that really like freaks me out the most about it is because we talked about in, I guess, the first episode that we did about like the esports bubble, is like we were ha-haing it up, we were yucking it up about, people saying, the Call of Duty League will be here 20 years from now because blah blah blah. And, we find that laughable because it's like none of this shit's going to be here in 20 years. But when there is a military component, like if the military takes over even just the first person shooter world, which it like fits like a glove, that to me is like the one real way that I see that statement being true. Because there are things that have been going on forever that it's like, military families, right? Like the kids are in like Boy Scouts or like JROTC or like whatever. If like FPS esports becomes one of those things that like military families do, regardless of what the current FPS is, then that becomes an American institution, capital A, capital I, American institution, and that will stick around forever.
To be fair, they tried that. They
Yeah.
had America's Army, which was a military game that they commissioned, and it was bad.
There's
Yeah.
also Full Spectrum Warrior, which was supposed to train people. I feel like your little nightmare scenario here has already kind of come to fruition via Ubisoft and Activision, because I was sitting during E3 in the newsroom of a prominent games journalism outfit, who I will not name drop now because they paid me and I left, and it's fine. I was freelancing. But they were sitting through all the fucking Rainbow Six this, Rainbow Six that, like game after game from, I believe Ubisoft is the developer of those things. And everyone was like, we get it. You're like completely propped up by military funding and propaganda to just crap out these grayscale, semi-realistic counter FARC, counter Arab terrorist shooter games. Like there's already a branch of that. Like that the military already has their tendrils completely wrapped around.
Well,
Yeah,
I,
but
I kind of wonder how much of that is military pay and how much of that is just like the American glorification of the military complex.
Exactly, yeah.
Gamers' willingness to buy fucking anything.
Yeah,
A
that's
bunch
the
of
thing. Like
idiots.
my angle wasn't necessarily that it's like that they're going to be behind the games, but that like the high school athlete, the like high school ROTC person, the like Boy Scouts, like when they're younger, like whatever is, it's not, I don't necessarily mean like the military taking control of like games, but like the thing I'm more concerned about is like if high school FPS esports athlete becomes a thing that you do, and then when you graduate high school you sign up for the military. That's more what I was
I don't
talking
think
about.
it'll ever get that big.
Yeah,
but
that's just what
here's
I'm concerned
I know.
about. Like,
Actually, I heard
I
like
don't know.
for a while that a lot of recruits were basically Call of Duty fanatics, and they
Yeah.
all sucked at basic. So, I wish I were joking.
Right.
It's,
Yeah, no, like the
so this
fail
is like
kid.
doing it even more. You know?
I guess
Yeah.
I guess for me the thing is I think military has been very successful in the co-optation of gamers, and that's actually different to the co-optation of esports. And we need, and the point is actually hasn't gotten that bad yet. And in a lot of ways, like esports isn't as successful as people want to make it out to be. And in that way, it's like we don't have that much like to worry about there. But also, it's still like don't even let them fucking try.
Yeah. Even if it's small, like as soon as there's a national anthem at a Call of Duty event, it's all over.
I know this shit, especially the Cloud9 shit, really
I
makes
Google that because I know it's
Mango's
going to be a thing already.
Mango's
Yeah.
whole like nationalistic shtick was
Yeah.
like kind of funny up until I discovered that there was like a literal fucking like, okay, it was specifically only their CS:GO team, but like might have to figure that one out at some point. It's gonna be tough to litigate. So there was this controversy a while ago about how CS:GO was having trouble picking up sponsorships because the word terrorist is heavily featured in it. And this was really interesting to me, because it's the one game in which first of all, yes, you're playing as the so-called terrorist, but it's actually surprisingly like ideologically free. There's no real description of what the terrorists are doing or attacking or what the counter-terrorists are attacking. Everything in it reads to me as pretty solidly Eastern European of the characters.
Yeah, there
within it.
is, but like the suggestion is very like
Is
it's
it?
very blurred. It's very border.
Right? It's
I'd say
intentionally
borderline
very
vague, and it can be either Eastern European or Middle Eastern. If
Right.
especially like the outfits, I think is
Yeah,
more of a
there's a
There's
lot
giveaway.
like
of-
a plausible deniability there.
Yeah,
Bravo.
but actually it's funny. They did have, and when you talk about like the esports bubble, I don't remember you guys talking about this. There was something by like an Xbox module where they had like a franchise of CS:GO teams around the world. It was like the first big franchising attempt, but it was like multiple games. One of them was Counter-Strike, and they had to change everything to like water guns and basketball
yeah.
jerseys.
I love that shit.
I love that shit too.
It was hilarious. They had to remove any implication that there was military violence, one military,
Like
two
Chinese
violence.
PUBG.
Yeah, Chinese Chinese PUBG, and like we're killing the
Boneless
bad
Forsaken.
people.
That was like the oldest example of that.
So-
All the undead in Chinese WoW are literally
Oh my God.
boneless.
Yeah, they do that.
There's
They
like
had,
glob people.
Yeah.
they literally have to change all the Dota characters to get rid of bones, but that's fun. But no,
the-
more to the point though, they did have to do that to get it on to get sponsors, to get on national television, to make it more accessible.
But
and
what's
yeah.
wild to me about that is that this is because there are playable terrorists,
Mm-hmm.
and the ideological idea there is that terrorism is the thing of ideology, and the implied U.S. I think it's also worth noting that Counter-Strike does, as a franchise, actually predate our current relationship with the war on terror. So there is some leeway there, I think, but also just the fact that ideology is the thing terrorists have. The U.S. military is the default.
They won every war.
They won every war. To be fair,
won
they
every-
haven't declared a war since the last one they won.
Yeah, you can't
But
lose
yeah.
to a concept.
I think in the Twitter thread you guys found me, and I literally
Yeah.
called the U.S. military the G Fuel.
Yeah, that was
of
really what got you on here. It's like it's not just that it's bad; it's also that it particularly sucks.
It's like I wish we could at least say we did something good and that we are a company like we have a company worth like your time. But you know,
Yeah,
first of all,
yeah.
first of all, evil. Second of all, evil. Third of all, evil to our veterans. And we just suck at it. We
Yeah.
just suck at what we do.
Our dystopia is just constantly shitting the bed. The
US
fucking bad.
The U.S. military has not beaten another top player since the 1940s, but they play Melee on the West Coast, so everyone overvalues them.
Right.
That's the way it is.
Oh shit!
They all play League on US West.
It's like, don't do this to West Balls. It's such a clear subtweet.
All right, so that's a lot of heavy stuff. You know, it's a lot of high stakes geopolitical stuff that we now have to think about whenever we're watching Tekken. But so Victoria, you did a service this weekend at the Fortnite World Cup.
A real service.
Yeah.
Real
Not like the
service.
rest of these chumps.
Yeah, I reported on the front lines of the legendary, inevitable Fortnite World Cup. And actually, it was, I'm sorry to everyone here and listening, but it was good. I know.
That's
I'm
fair.
sorry.
That's
You know,
fair.
and I keep saying like,
Begrudgingly.
you know how like 4 years ago we were like, oh, we want production value on LED screens everywhere. We want to have a really good DJ.
Actually, I want production value on CRT screen.
Yeah. And for better or worse, Fortnite actually pulled that off. Like on a, you know, on like a shallow production level, it was actually exciting, and I had a great time with that. In terms of actually running things, it's still Fortnite. So like Friday, they ran like an hour and a half late, getting the what should be a timed mode, by the way, the creative mode, and moving that to Pro-Am. And then they had an hour of celebrity introductions.
Cool.
A whole hour. I managed to make my way up to a VIP section and like with a bunch of other reporters who I will not name so that they don't get in trouble. But we all just looked at each other like halfway through. It was like, is this done yet? And then we look up and they keep going. And it was torture. We've never experienced anything like that.
I'm glad people with way more money than me are also fucking tournaments up just as hard.
There is no height to which someone cannot fail.
Yeah.
You know?
Otherwise, good production.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, that was just Friday. Once duos and solos started, it was actually really cool. Like, Fortnite is not an easy game. Like, we make fun of it a lot, you know, because it's all kids. And,
Because the
yeah,
kids like it,
the
and
kids
we're
like
old.
it. And yeah,
But
that's
no, it's a cool game.
It's actually legitimately like a difficult game to master. Like you can learn how to play, but like they change so much all the time. There's so many people playing. There's so many good people playing that play all day. That's all they do. They play Fortnite. They're these 12-year-old kids who come home, finish their homework. Actually 14 or 13, you have to be able to qualify. And you sit there and you watch it in this giant arena with a bunch of other kids, and everyone is just, you know, you'd expect like, you know, weird kid stuff, but everyone's just in awe because these players are so good. And it's, you know, at the end of it, like this other reporter and I looked at each other and we were like, we feel like this kid earned this $3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This kid really freaking earned it.
He smacked the fuck out of everybody.
My problems with Fortnite esports have largely just been that I didn't think that they worked very well. I didn't think Battle Royale, the All for One, and One for All, I didn't think it actually translated very well into like a product you could easily track or watch. And I think the amount they've done in regards to that to ease that process has actually been genuinely very, I'm sure there's still kinks, but like I'm watching them like they have all these very interesting camera angles now where you're watching people just, and it like really gives you a sense of scale as to like what these players are doing and like the skill ceiling also, where you're just watching like a whole bunch of different people like building towers and
Oh, the
it's
tower.
pretty
building.
interesting.
There was like, it was like an apartment like if you walk down like Brooklyn,
Yeah.
like down one of the gentrified streets, it looked like that. Like at any given
Glass
point,
tower. Look at the
There's
glass
this big
buildings.
glass tower of
With
wood
LEDs.
and brick and
Yeah.
like metal, and it was just awkward.
They
but
go
it-
up about as fast.
There's like a
Yeah.
juice.
Come down
There's like a
just as
juice.
pretty much.
place.
And also,
Yeah.
it's not a grift. It's a marketing campaign for Fortnite.
Yeah, it's
and
a
some
money
DLC and
catapult.
shit.
Oh yeah.
Love to see it.
is a model that makes fucking sense. And like, look, I don't like money, so I'm not gonna pretend I like love it, but like it makes so much more sense to me than this franchising shit. So I'll give them that.
Yeah, and definitely I mean it has its issue. Like it comes off as a marketing thing because like a lot of their decisions in
Well, it
you know
should be.
Yeah,
I mean,
and like
anyone
their
ask me-
decisions in making it competitive are like and I think like people take it seriously enough where now they're like,
Right, it does seem-
we got to crack down now. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Because
Can
at
I
first,
just I just want to say I'm so fucking relieved that they took all of this money and they didn't do any of the Deadmau 5 bullshit that like Dota and all those have done in the past.
Well, they
didn't
did do that.
Well, they did.
but
Yeah.
I'm glad we've moved past
What they
it.
did
That is
instead
my-
of just like
Yeah.
they were-
overwrought expenditure bullshit with like performances that don't really click with esports audiences, instead they kind of did the YouTuber strat where you just kind of spend an extended amount of time saying basically nothing because your audience is 8-year-olds and they're not soaking in anything that you're saying anyway. They would just like cut to that one sunshine guy to just say nothing for 10 minutes.
Well, they
between
were
games.
saying stuff, but it was like, but
He
it's
just-
esports and sports stuff to me.
Yeah,
And
he was just
like-
saying a lot. Like we were sitting here joking, we should just drank every time they said these are the best players in the world. I'm
Oh,
like,
God.
Yeah.
well, I damn hope so.
Yeah, honestly,
It
I
is
don't
kind.
know.
I mean, that is
Because if you're
interesting.
having a $3 million tournament with not the best players in the world, you probably fucked
Yeah,
up.
that's,
somewhere.
I
do
should have
have
had a
this-
drinking game. $40 million. Take a sip.
I do have this issue actually with not with Fortnite in particular, but there's this tension between everyone in esports as an industry wants every game that is independently popular to be an esport because it'll get them checks signed. When a lot of the things that are encouraged in gameplay, specifically such as variety in terms of who wins and stuff. Like, in order to get a consistent winner of Fortnite, what do they have to run 6 games?
Yeah, they do.
That's hard.
And how has that
a
gone
lot
so
of
far? How has
constraining-
Fortnite generating consistent champion-like figures gone? Because Tfue died a very public death this weekend, and he wasn't even particularly the best
But-
one. Like,
yeah, no, but
and
that's
then you
my-
look at the guys who won like the first skirmishes like a year ago; they're gone.
That's my thing.
Everybody's
Like,
gone.
you have to do a lot
Yeah.
of work to reassure everyone that like these are the best players because like. I mean, I think the kid that won is probably the best out of the
Yeah.
people who were there.
I mean,
but
he
like,
earned $3 million by being the best at adapting to this game that changes wildly constantly.
Yeah,
And
it's-
that
it's
matters.
valid.
Yeah,
Well, I think Fortnite kind of breaks that idea too because it's the skill ceiling, and it's actually kind of like the way that they juggle it around. I will admit that the commentary was really, really good. Like the observing and like
They made me think that I knew who this kid was.
Yeah, and it was like the guy told me there were. I talked to a producer for like a fan bite piece, and he mentioned that they had like upwards of 30 observers, like just controlling cameras, and it showed. It really did show, and like they did the research on all their players, and I think that's where like, you know, I don't think a lot of esports. A lot of companies, a lot of production, whatever, do a good job with narrative, and that's
Yeah.
really what esports needs to have in order for people to be engaged. Like, I don't know anything about Fortnite. I'm besides that I shoot people, a few things here and there, and that the audience is like,
There's dances, right?
yeah, there's
Where's those
dances. There's
come from?
dances, and like everyone's 16 years old playing this game, except for like the dude who used to be a Dota player and a HOTS player and won second place here.
Really?
Go
Yeah.
Psalm. Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, how old is he?
24.
23. Yeah.
Oh, thank God. There's
Yeah.
hope for me. No.
There's hope for you yet. There's hope for me. I'm 24, but
Yeah, you just got to be a top player in another game first.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we got the Asian American rep, CLG. We got the New York,
Is
all
that-
that jazz.
Okay,
There's still no Jewish esports.
There's still no Jewish
Pros.
sports influencers as far as we know.
No, I mean there's Fly, who's like a Dota person. There's Dota has so many
Is
like.
he an influencer though?
No.
'Cause there are good Jewish esports
Smeechy?
players.
Meet
Yeah.
the King not Jewish? Is that my
He's
name?
not an influencer.
Fair.
He is
Yeah.
Jewish. We actually figured this out.
Yeah.
Because other than him, the best Jewish Smash player is like Zengazin, and that's weird.
Where was he going with this? Yeah, no narrative, but yeah, that's what esports groups need to do throughout the year.
Yeah.
And Fortnite like did it this one time, and it's like, well, you can do this every other day of the year, right? Like pay people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
Their
good to hear.
players stick
Honestly,
around, yeah, but they did a good job trapping it in.
You know, kids play Fortnite. Sometimes people rag on it because the kids do it. At the end of the day, it's something that has a lot of expression and skill. People put a lot into this thing from
It
what
looks
you're
like
saying.
a fuck ton of fun.
And it looks like a lot of fun. And like, I don't know, at the end of the day, we like games. we like competing in games or observing game competitions and stuff, and we want that to continue to be fun. And there's something to that, not having an ulterior motive, like the stuff that we were talking about.
Good, clean fun.
You know, good, clean fun is valuable, and I don't know.
Yeah.
We should involve the military in that. We should just do our thing.
Fortnite
Just play stuff.
shoehorning
It's
a
good.
battle royale experience into a valuable esports product, pretty cool. The military shoehorning itself into esports and the FGC, not so cool.
Not so
Anyways, that sounds like the episode.
That's a good note to end it on. Do you want to plug anything that you are working on? Any articles? Your Twitter?
Freelancer, by the
VPN.
way.
Yeah.
So you want to be picked up?
Pick me up.
Okay.
No,
You're
but
doing
for
the
real,
unsponsored BTW.
unsponsored. That's literally what I took it
No,
from
I'm
your
really-
Hosey. Like I
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's great.
God
I
bless
love
her.
her.
Yeah. What a ledge.
What a legend. What a gay legend we stand. Yeah, so I mean, I don't need any more Twitter followers, but if you want your entire feed to just
That's
be
a lot.
my content, then you can follow me because I tweet a lot. I am very online and
How do I pronounce your...
Rin in Gear. Like Rin in Gear. So that's my Twitter. I like writing about games. I will write anything about games. I haven't getting picked up by a few outlets. I have a few things in the works. One about Smash, which should be interesting.
Is it about how we smell?
Yeah, it
God
should be.
damn it.
Again.
Oh, fuck.
I hear you man.
Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota.
I feel you man.
Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och pushar på och smeker med motståndet vi leker. Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och springer runt och creepar och motståndet vi slipar.
Let's get it on.
Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och pushar på och smeker med motståndet vi leker. Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och springer runt och creepar och motståndet vi slipar. Vi sitter här i väntan och spelar lite Dota och pushar på och smeker